a solitary existence etched against the mountain's embrace. Silas was a fixture of the remote mountain village, a silent sentinel amidst the whispering pines and the stoic granite peaks that clawed at the cerulean sky. His life, much like the weathered timber of his small cabin, bore the indelible marks of solitude and hardship. The village itself was a scattering of sturdy stone and wood dwellings clinging precariously to the mountainside, a testament to the resilience of its inhabitants against the unforgiving terrain. It was a place where time seemed to flow at a different current, dictated by the slow turning of the seasons and the ancient rhythms of the natural world. Silas, in his early 40s, carried the weight of years that felt far heavier, etched onto his lean frame and the quiet resignation in his deep-set eyes. His story was a familiar one in these parts, a narrative woven with the threads of early loss and the unyielding grip of poverty. His parents, sturdy folk who had eked out a meagre living from the stubborn soil and the sparse bounty of the forest, had been taken by a harsh winter illness when Silas was barely a man himself. Left alone in the drafty cabin that had sheltered generations of his family, he had inherited not land or wealth, but a legacy of toil and a profound sense of being tethered to this isolated existence. The vibrant tapestry of youthful dreams had faded, replaced by the muted hues of necessity and the quiet acceptance of his lot. Marriage, a cornerstone of community and a flicker of warmth against the biting mountain winds, had remained an elusive dream. Not for lack of desire, but due to the stark realities of his circumstances. In a world where survival was a daily negotiation with the elements, a wife and family represented an added burden, a responsibility he felt ill-equipped to shoulder with his meagre resources. The few eligible women in the village, their lives equally circumscribed by the demands of their families and the land, had found partners with slightly more promising prospects, leaving Silas to navigate the winding paths of his days in quiet solitude. His connection to the mountain, however, was deep and abiding. It was a relationship forged through years of shared silence, of witnessing its ever-changing moods, from the gentle caress of summer breezes through the leaves to the fierce, howling wrath of winter storms that plastered the landscape in a thick blanket of snow and ice. He knew its hidden trails, the secret springs that bubbled forth from the earth, the ancient trees that stood like silent guardians, their gnarled branches reaching towards the heavens. This intimate knowledge had led him to the role of a forest ranger, a position that offered a modest but reliable income, and, more importantly, allowed him to immerse himself in the familiar embrace of the wilderness. The ranger duties were not arduous for Silas. Having spent his entire life navigating the steep slopes and dense forests, the work felt less like a job and more like an extension of his natural rhythm. He understood the subtle language of the woods, the rustling of leaves that spoke of unseen creatures, the sharp crack of a breaking branch that hinted at danger, the scent of damp earth and pine needles that filled his lungs with a sense of belonging. Every 2 days, he would embark on his patrol, a solitary circuit through designated areas of the vast mountain range. It was a routine that brought a sense of purpose to his days, a quiet satisfaction in contributing to the preservation of the natural world that had always been his silent companion. The extra coins he earned were a welcome addition, easing the constant pinch of poverty and allowing him small comforts that would otherwise be unattainable. One particular winter morning dawned with a crystalline clarity that often precedes a deeper cold. The air was sharp and biting, each inhale a prickle in his nostrils. A fresh layer of snow, pristine and untouched, blanketed the landscape, transforming the familiar contours of the mountain into a breathtaking vista of white and shadow. Silas, bundled in his worn but warm layers of clothing, set out on his routine patrol. The early morning light cast long, ethereal shadows from the towering pines, painting the snow-covered ground in stripes of deep blue. The initial stretch of his trek was relatively level, allowing him to move with a steady, if unhurried, pace. The crunch of his worn leather boots breaking the crisp surface of the snow was the dominant sound, punctuated by the occasional sigh of the wind through the branches overhead. Yet, as the terrain began to incline, the effort of trudging through the knee-deep snow became more pronounced. Each step was a small battle against the clinging resistance, his muscles protesting with a dull ache. He was not a young man anymore, and the years of hard labor had taken their toll. His breath began to come in ragged gasps, the cold air burning in his lungs. The silence of the winter forest, usually a source of comfort, now seemed to amplify the sound of his labored breathing. He found himself stopping frequently, leaning heavily on his sturdy walking stick, his chest heaving as he tried to regain his breath. The vastness of the snow-covered landscape stretched before him, beautiful yet demanding, a constant reminder of the raw power of nature. It was during one of these pauses, as he stood catching his breath amidst the profound stillness, that a sound pierced the quietude. It was faint, almost imperceptible, a delicate thread of vulnerability woven into the otherwise silent tapestry of the winter morning. A whine, not the sharp bark of a fox or the howl of a distant wolf, but something softer, more fragile, carrying a note of distress. Silas stilled, his hand tightening on his walking stick, his senses immediately heightened. He held his breath, straining to hear above the pounding of his own heart. The sound had been fleeting, and now the forest was silent once more. He frowned, a flicker of doubt crossing his weathered face. Had it been his imagination? The wind playing tricks on his ears? The wariness of his exertion manifesting as auditory hallucinations? He stood for a long moment, listening intently, the only sound the gentle whisper of the wind high in the branches. Just as he began to dismiss it as a figment of his tired mind and prepared to resume his slow ascent, the sound returned. This time it was clearer, though still weak and laced with a palpable sense of pain. It was a soft, whimpering cry, like that of a small creature in distress. Silas's gaze darted around, his eyes scanning the pristine expanse of snow. The sound seemed to emanate from somewhere ahead, towards a small patch of withered brown grass that stubbornly poked through the white blanket. A prickle of unease ran down his spine. What could be making such a sound in this desolate, snow-covered landscape? His ranger instincts, honed by years of observation, told him it was not the sound of a creature naturally adapted to the harsh winter. A sense of cautious curiosity mingled with a nascent feeling of concern. He abandoned his upward trajectory and began to move slowly towards the patch of brown grass, his boots sinking silently into the snow. His senses were on high alert, his eyes scanning the surrounding area for any sign of movement or danger. He moved with the practiced stealth of someone who had spent his life navigating the wilderness, his footsteps deliberate and quiet. The silence of the forest seemed to deepen as he approached the source of the mysterious sound. The only sound now, the soft crunch of his boots in the snow and the faint, intermittent whimper that tugged at something deep within him. He had no idea what awaited him, but the fragile cry had awakened a protective instinct, a stirring of empathy in the quiet solitude of his mountain existence. The unveiling of vulnerability beneath the snow's embrace. Silas moved with deliberate slowness toward the patch of withered grass, each footfall a soft compression against the pristine snow. The faint, intermittent whimpers grew slightly louder with every step, confirming he was closing in on their source. A knot of unease tightened in his chest. The mountain, as beautiful as it was unforgiving, often held its secrets in shadow. Sounds like this, so out of place in the dead hush of winter, could mean many things. A wounded animal, a predator, or something else entirely. His walking stick, usually just a part of his steady rhythm, was now gripped with purpose. The patch of brown grass came into sharper view, a stubborn scrap of life poking through the thick white blanket, refusing surrender to the season's harsh grip. And then he saw it. A tremor. Barely there, a soft stirring that disturbed the stillness of the brittle stalks. His breath hitched. Something was indeed there. Drawing closer, he lowered himself cautiously, the cold biting through his layers as he knelt. His breath rose in pale puffs. With eyes narrowed against the blinding brightness of the snow, he scanned the small clearing. At first it was only dead vegetation and frozen earth. Then a twitch, subtle but unmistakable, a shift of something dark tucked into the tangled grass. Slowly Silas reached out, parting the dry blades with gloved fingers, and nestled in the hollow beneath them, barely visible at first glance, was a small triangular head. The fur was a mottled blend of muted orange and black, camouflaged against the winter-dulled earth. A tiger cub. His heart jolted. A tiger cub up here? In the dead of winter? The tiny creature's eyes, clouded and glassy with distress, flicked open. A soft, pitiful whimper broke the silence. Surprise washed over him, quickly giving way to something deeper, something instinctive and fierce. A tiger cub, alone, injured and impossibly fragile. It made no sense. In his years as a ranger, he had glimpsed the regal stride of adult tigers from afar, rare, proud, powerful. But this was a whisper of life, a shivering ember on the brink of going out. His eyes swept over the cub, searching for the source of its pain. Blood, dull patches of it, matted its fur, and then he saw the wounds, open gashes, angry and raw, the kind left by teeth, smaller predators, maybe a fox or wild dogs. But what truly turned his stomach was the hind leg, twisted, broken, the bone protruding in a jagged line through torn flesh, white on red, brutal, unmistakable. Silas sat back for a breath, his heart heavy. The wild was cruel. He knew that better than most. The strong survived, the weak didn't. He had accepted that logic for years, hardened himself to its reality. But now, looking down at this wounded, helpless creature, something stirred. He saw more than an injured animal. He saw suffering. He saw loneliness. And in that reflection he saw himself. There was no choice, really, no weighing of pros and cons. The decision made itself. He couldn't leave the cub here, not like this. Gently, with a care he hadn't known he possessed, Silas reached out again. The cub whimpered but didn't resist. Maybe it knew. Maybe it understood, in the way wild things sometimes do. Carefully he lifted it into his arms. It was light, frighteningly so. Just bones and pain and a flicker of warmth, barely clinging to life. He cradled it close, letting its fragile body press against the thick fabric of his jacket, hoping his own warmth might offer some small relief. The cub's head drooped against him, its whimpers softened. Everything else faded, the patrol route, the cold, the ache in his legs. None of it mattered now. Only this fragile, breathing life in his arms. The path back down the mountain, which had seemed so long before, now took on urgency, purpose. He would take the cub home. He would do whatever he could. The snow around him was still and silent, but something had changed. In the hush, there was connection, shared vulnerability, a flicker of companionship in a place long ruled by solitude. Within the walls of solitude, a flicker of shared warmth. The descent from the mountainside, which had been a slow and laboured trudge just moments before, was now imbued with a newfound urgency. Silas moved with a careful haste, his eyes constantly scanning the treacherous terrain, ensuring that every step was secure. The small, fragile weight cradled against his chest served as a constant reminder of the delicate life he now held in his hands. The biting wind seemed to whisper anxieties, but Silas pressed on, driven by a primal instinct to protect the vulnerable creature nestled within his embrace. The familiar silhouette of his small cabin eventually emerged through the swirling snow, a beacon of warmth and shelter against the stark white landscape. It was a simple structure, built with sturdy logs and a steeply pitched roof designed to shed the heavy mountain snows. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, a testament to the meagre fire he had lit before his patrol, now a promise of warmth that felt more significant than ever. Reaching the cabin, Silas carefully nudged the door open with his boot, stepping inside and immediately being enveloped by the relatively warmer air. The interior was Spartan but functional, reflecting the solitary life he led. A small cast-iron stove sat in one corner, radiating a gentle heat that chased away the immediate chill. A rough-hewn table and a couple of stools occupied the centre of the room, their surfaces worn smooth by years of use. A narrow cot lined one wall, covered with a patchwork quilt faded with time, each square a memory of winters past. The scent of wood smoke and dried herbs hung in the air, a familiar and comforting aroma that spoke of resilience and self-sufficiency. With the utmost gentleness, Silas carried the injured tiger cub to the centre of the room, his brow furrowed with concern as he sought a suitable place to lay it down. The cold stone floor was out of the question, its unforgiving surface offering no comfort for the ailing creature. His gaze swept across the room, his eyes finally settling on a pile of old, tattered clothes tucked away in a corner, remnants of garments long past their prime, kept not for their beauty, but for their utility as rags or extra insulation against the harsh drafts. They would have to suffice. He cleared a small space on the floor, his movements deliberate and tender, and carefully arranged the softest pieces of cloth into a makeshift bed. He layered them meticulously, creating a nest of faded colours and worn textures, a stark contrast to the pristine white of the snow outside. Then, with painstaking care, as if handling spun glass, he lowered the small cub onto the makeshift nest. The cub stirred, letting out a soft whimper as its small body made contact with the rough fabric. Its tiny limbs twitched slightly, and it shifted, seeking a more comfortable position. Despite its discomfort, it didn't try to move away, its small body seemingly drained of all energy, clinging to the fragile warmth the cloths provided. Silas knelt beside it, his weathered face etched with concern as he examined the extent of its injuries more closely in the dim light of the cabin. The flickering flames from the stove casting shadows on the walls, illuminating the grim reality of the cub's condition. The bite marks were even more gruesome up close, raw and inflamed, oozing a clear fluid that spoke of infection. They were a testament to the violence of the attack, a stark reminder of the brutal struggle for survival that played out in the wilderness, unseen by human eyes. The size and spacing of the marks suggested the attack of a smaller predator, perhaps a fox or a wild dog, their desperation in the face of winter leading them to prey on such a vulnerable target. The broken leg was a more immediate and pressing concern. The bone protruded through the skin at an unnatural angle, stark white against the bloodied fur, a clear indication of a severe fracture. Silas had seen broken bones before, in animals and, on rare occasions, in men. He knew that without proper care, the injury could easily become infected, leading to further complications and potentially death. He also understood the limitations of his knowledge and resources. He was a forest ranger, not a healer. Yet he couldn't stand idly by and watch this small creature succumb to its injuries. He had to try. His immediate priority was to stop the bleeding, clean the wounds and stabilize the broken leg. He rose and moved with a newfound purpose, his movements surprisingly swift and decisive, belying his age. He went to a small shelf he had fashioned from salvaged wood, where he kept his meager collection of medicinal herbs, gathered from the surrounding mountains over the years. He knew the properties of each plant, passed down through generations of mountain folk. Knowledge gleaned from careful observation and a deep understanding of the natural world. He selected a handful of leaves known for their antiseptic and styptic properties, their jagged edges and earthy scent promising relief. With practiced hands, honed by years of working with the land, he crushed and ground the herbs in a small stone mortar, using a pestle worn smooth by countless repetitions. As he worked, the fragrant oils of the plants were released, filling the small cabin with a pungent, slightly bitter aroma that mingled with the scent of wood smoke and offered a faint promise of healing. Returning to the cub, Silas knelt once more, his large frame somehow managing to be both imposing and gentle. He carefully cleaned the bite marks with a soft piece of cloth dampened with water, his touch as light as a feather. He worked with meticulous precision, removing the dried blood and debris, revealing the raw flesh beneath. The cub whimpered softly, its small body trembling slightly, but it didn't try to pull away. There was a trust forming, a silent understanding between the man and the animal, a recognition of the shared need for comfort and healing. Then he carefully applied the crushed herbs to the open wounds, their dark green paste, a stark contrast to the cub's orange and black fur. The cub flinched at the touch, a low growl rumbling in its tiny chest, a sound that was more a whimper of pain than a threat. But it mostly remained still, its small body tense but accepting, as if it instinctively understood that Silas was trying to help, that this strange, large creature meant it no harm. The broken leg required more immediate and delicate attention. The exposed bone was a stark and unsettling sight, a constant reminder of the cub's fragility. Silas knew that improper handling could cause further damage, potentially crippling the animal for life. He had to stabilize the leg, to immobilize it and allow the fractured bone to heal. His gaze swept around the cabin once more, his eyes searching for suitable materials. His gaze fell upon a small pile of dried twigs and branches he had gathered for kindling, their thin forms seemingly inadequate for the task. But Silas saw potential where others might see only firewood. He carefully selected a few of the straightest twigs, their surfaces smooth and relatively uniform. With his trusty knife, its blade honed to a razor's edge, he whittled the twigs down to smooth, even lengths, shaping them into makeshift splints. He worked with a patient precision, his large hands moving with surprising dexterity, transforming the rough branches into tools of healing. Then, using strips of torn cloth from the tattered garments, he gently positioned the makeshift splints around the cub's broken leg, his calloused fingers working with a tenderness that belied their strength. He carefully aligned the exposed bone as best he could, his movements guided by intuition and a deep-seated desire to do no further harm. He secured the splints firmly but not too tightly, ensuring that the makeshift bandage would offer support and stability without restricting circulation. He wrapped the strips of cloth around the leg and splints, tying them off with small, neat knots. It was a delicate process, a careful balancing act between providing support and avoiding further injury. As he worked, the daylight outside began to fade, the last vestiges of the setting sun painting the snow-covered landscape in hues of purple and deep blue. Inside the cabin, the flickering flames from the stove cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating an intimate and almost ethereal atmosphere. The warmth from the stove offered a small comfort against the growing chill of the evening, a refuge from the harsh realities of the winter night. Once the cub's leg was bandaged, Silas sat back on his heels, a sigh of relief escaping his lips. He observed the small creature, his weathered face softening with a mixture of exhaustion and a quiet satisfaction. The cub lay still, its breathing shallow but steady, its small chest rising and falling in a rhythmic pattern. Its eyes were closed now, a semblance of peace settling over its small form, a fragile truce in the battle against pain and injury. The pangs of his own hunger began to assert themselves, a gnawing reminder that he hadn't eaten since the previous evening. His stomach growled softly, a counterpoint to the quiet crackling of the fire. But the thought of preparing a meal, of tending to his own needs, felt secondary to the well-being of the injured cub. His gaze lingered on the small, still form, his mind preoccupied with its survival. What did a tiger cub eat? He had no experience with such creatures, especially not one so young and vulnerable. He knew they were carnivores, hunters by nature, but this cub was too young to hunt. Meat, undoubtedly, but he had none readily available. His meagre supplies consisted of dried beans, some root vegetables, and a few smoked fish, hardly suitable fare for a recovering tiger. Then, a memory surfaced, a solution both unexpected and strangely fitting. Just the other day, his old, scruffy hound, Bess, had given birth to a litter of pups in the small kennel he had built outside. Bess was a good mother, fiercely protective of her young and usually well supplied with milk. An idea, unconventional and perhaps a little desperate, sparked in Silas's mind. It was a long shot, but it was the only option he had. He rose abruptly, his hunger momentarily forgotten, and grabbed a small earthenware bowl from the shelf. He moved with a renewed sense of purpose, his earlier wariness replaced by a focused determination. He pulled on his thick coat against the evening chill, the cold air a stark reminder of the world outside the cabin's fragile warmth. The night was settling in, the darkness punctuated only by the faint glow of the stars and the distant howl of the wind. The kennel was a simple wooden structure nestled against the side of the cabin, offering Bess and her pups some protection from the elements. It was a humble abode, but it was dry and relatively warm, a safe haven for the small family within. As he approached, Bess rose from her bed of straw, a low growl rumbling in her chest, her eyes wary and protective. She was a loyal companion, but her maternal instincts were strong, and she was always cautious of strangers, even her master, when her pups were involved. Silas knelt down, speaking to her in a low, soothing voice, his tone gentle and reassuring. "Bess, old girl," he murmured, his breath misting in the cold air, "I need a little help. Just a little bit of your milk, for the little one." He wasn't sure if she understood his words, but his voice was calm and steady, devoid of any threat. He hoped she would sense his intentions, his desire to help, not harm. He carefully coaxed Bess to lie down again, stroking her rough fur with a gentle hand. He spoke to her softly, his words a mixture of reassurance and explanation, though he knew she wouldn't grasp their literal meaning. He tried to convey his need through his touch, his tone, the sheer sincerity of his request. And to his surprise, Bess seemed to understand. Perhaps it was the urgency in his voice, or the pleading in his eyes, or perhaps it was simply the primal connection between two mothers, a shared understanding of the need to nurture and protect. With a gentleness that surprised even himself, Silas managed to collect a small amount of her milk in the earthenware bowl. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Bess whined softly but allowed him to proceed. Her body relaxing slightly, she seemed to sense that her milk was needed for a creature in distress. Returning to the cabin, Silas knelt beside the still sleeping cub, his heart filled with a fragile hope. He gently nudged its small head with his finger, his touch barely a whisper. The cub stirred, its cloudy yellow eyes fluttering open, blinking slowly in the dim light. Silas carefully held the bowl of warm milk to its mouth, his hand steady despite the tremor of anticipation within him. The cub hesitated for a moment, its small nose twitching as it sniffed the unfamiliar scent. It was a scent of warmth and nourishment, a primal aroma that spoke of sustenance and life. Then, tentatively, it lowered its head and stuck out a small pink tongue, its movements weak and uncoordinated. It lapped at the milk with slow, deliberate movements, its tiny body trembling slightly with the effort. A wave of relief washed over Silas as he watched the cub drink. It was a small amount, but it was a start. It was a sign that the cub had the will to live, that its small body was still capable of fighting. As the cub continued to lick at the milk, its movements gaining a little more strength with each lap, Silas murmured a quiet hope, a silent prayer for its recovery. "As long as you're willing to eat," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion, "you've got a chance. You've got a chance." In the days that followed, the unlikely pair settled into a routine, like a fragile rhythm of life dictated by the cub's needs and Silas's unwavering dedication. Silas would tend to his meagre fields and perform his ranger duties, his movements slower now, more deliberate, as if conserving energy for the tasks that lay ahead. But his thoughts were never far from the small, injured creature back in his cabin. He would hurry back at every opportunity, eager to check on Shadow's progress, to offer it nourishment, and to simply be near it. He continued to feed Shadow the milk from Bess, carefully rationing the small supply to ensure the pups were not deprived. As Shadow grew stronger, Silas supplemented the milk with small pieces of softened meat, chewed and mashed to a consistency the cub could manage. It was a messy and time-consuming process, but Silas undertook it with a quiet determination, his large hands, more accustomed to handling rough tools and weathered wood, now performing the delicate task of nursing a wounded animal. He spent his evenings by Shadow's side, observing its slow but steady progress. The wounds began to heal, the raw flesh knitting together, the angry red inflammation gradually subsiding. The swelling around its broken leg diminished, and Shadow began to tentatively put weight on it, its movements clumsy and unsteady at first, but improving with each passing day. A spark of wildness began to flicker in its eyes, a hint of the fierce and independent creature it was destined to become. Silas found himself talking to the cub, narrating his day, sharing the quiet thoughts that usually remained unspoken. He spoke of the changing seasons, the habits of the animals he encountered on his patrols, the ancient legends of the mountain people. He told stories of his own life, his voice a low rumble in the small cabin, his words a balm to the silence that had long been his only companion. Shadow, in turn, would listen with an unnerving intensity, its golden gaze fixed on Silas, its head cocked as if trying to decipher the meaning behind the strange sounds. There was a connection forming, a silent understanding passing between them that transcended the boundaries of species, a language of gestures and shared presence. A peculiar bond began to form within the walls of Silas's solitary cabin. It was a connection born of vulnerability and nurtured by care, an unexpected flicker of shared warmth in the cold, hard reality of the mountain. The lonely ranger, who had long resigned himself to a life of solitude, found himself with a companion, a small, fierce creature that had unexpectedly filled a void he hadn't even realized existed. The silence of his cabin was now punctuated by the soft purrs and occasional playful nips of the growing cub, a melody of life that had been absent for far too long. The days were no longer marked solely by the turning of the sun and the changing of the light, but by the small victories of Shadow's recovery, the gradual return of its wild spirit, and the quiet joy of an unexpected companionship. Growth, a difficult farewell, and a chance encounter. Over half a year passed, and the seasons turned in their endless cycle, painting the mountain in a constantly shifting palette of colours. Spring arrived, melting the heavy snows and awakening the dormant flora. Summer followed, draping the slopes in vibrant greenery and bringing a flurry of life to the once silent forests. Autumn then swept through, transforming the landscape into a breathtaking tapestry of gold, crimson, and russet before winter's return. Throughout this time, Shadow grew. The fragile cub, once teetering on the brink of death, transformed into a strong and majestic tiger, a testament to Silas's dedicated care. Its playful whimpers evolved into powerful roars that echoed through the valleys, a sound that both thrilled and saddened Silas. He knew this sound was a reminder of Shadow's true nature, a nature that belonged not in a small cabin, but in the vast wilderness. Their bond deepened with each passing day. Shadow became Silas's constant companion, accompanying him on his mountain patrols. The tiger moved with a fluid grace through the rugged terrain, its powerful muscles rippling beneath its striped fur. It seemed to understand Silas's every mood, its presence a comforting balm to his solitary existence. They would walk for hours, Silas pointing out the subtle wonders of the forest, the delicate dance of a butterfly, the intricate architecture of a spider's web, the secret trails known only to the mountain's creatures. Shadow, in turn, would share its own knowledge, its keen senses alerting Silas to the presence of hidden wildlife or the distant rumble of a storm. But amidst this growing companionship, a sense of unease began to stir within Silas. He knew that Shadow's place was not by his side forever. The tiger was a wild creature, and the mountains were its rightful domain. Silas had always known this, but the thought of parting with Shadow filled him with a profound sadness, a sense of loss that echoed the loneliness he had felt for so many years. The decision weighed heavily on him. He wrestled with the conflicting emotions, the joy of their shared life intertwined with the responsibility he felt for Shadow's well-being. He sought advice from the elders of the village, wise men and women who had lived in harmony with the mountain for generations. They confirmed what he already knew in his heart. Shadow belonged in the wild. The day came when Silas knew he could delay the inevitable no longer. Spring was in full bloom, the forest teeming with life, the perfect time for Shadow to begin its own journey. With a heavy heart, Silas led Shadow deeper into the forest, towards the more remote and rugged areas where the tiger would have ample space to roam and hunt. He tried to explain his intentions to Shadow, his voice a low rumble, his words laced with a mixture of love and sorrow. He spoke of the freedom of the wild, the thrill of the hunt, the importance of living according to its true nature. He stroked Shadow's thick fur, his touch lingering, imprinting the memory of their connection. Shadow seemed to understand the gravity of the moment. It nuzzled against Silas, its large body pressing close, its golden eyes filled with a deep sadness that mirrored his own. But when Silas finally turned to leave, Shadow became agitated. It refused to let him go, blocking his path, its powerful body tense and trembling. It let out a series of plaintive cries, a sound that tore at Silas's heart. Silas tried again, gently urging Shadow away, his voice firm but tender. He walked a few steps, then turned back, his hand outstretched. Shadow followed, but it remained close, its gaze fixed on Silas, a silent plea in its eyes. The separation was proving to be far more difficult than he had imagined. Finally, with a strength he didn't know he possessed, Silas turned and walked away, his back to Shadow. He didn't look back, couldn't bear to see the pain in those golden eyes. He walked until the sounds of Shadow's cries faded into the distance, leaving behind an echoing silence that was more deafening than any roar. The following days were filled with a profound emptiness. Silas went about his duties, patrolling the mountains, tending to his fields, but the joy had gone from his life. The forest felt strangely silent without Shadow's presence, the familiar trails echoing with a loneliness he had almost forgotten. He missed the warmth of Shadow's body against his, the soft rumble of its purrs, the unwavering companionship that had filled his days with purpose. One afternoon, while on patrol in a remote part of the forest, Silas began to feel unwell. A wave of dizziness washed over him, and his vision blurred. He tried to keep walking, but his legs felt weak and unsteady. The world around him seemed to sway, the familiar landmarks of the forest tilting and shifting. He stumbled, his hand reaching out to grasp a tree for support, but his strength failed him. He slid to the ground, his body heavy and unresponsive. The last thing he remembered was the feeling of the cold earth against his cheek and the fading light filtering through the trees. He awoke to the sound of a gentle voice calling his name. His eyes fluttered open, and he saw a woman kneeling beside him, her face etched with concern. She had kind eyes and strong hands, and her presence radiated a sense of calm and competence. "Silas," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Can you hear me?" Silas nodded weakly, his throat dry and his head throbbing. He recognized her as Willow, a woman from his village. She was known for her hard work and her self-sufficiency, traits that Silas had always admired. Willow explained that she had been gathering firewood nearby when she found him lying unconscious. She had recognized him and, with considerable effort, had managed to help him down the mountain. Silas was grateful for her assistance, her strength, and her compassion. He had always been a solitary man, but in that moment he felt a profound sense of gratitude for another human being. He was also deeply impressed by Willow's resourcefulness and determination. She had not hesitated to help a man in need, and she had done so with a quiet strength that spoke volumes about her character. Over the next few weeks, Silas's path crossed with Willow's more frequently. He found himself drawn to her quiet strength and her unwavering optimism. They shared stories of their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. Silas learned of Willow's own hardships, her own solitary existence, and the resilience she had developed in the face of adversity. He discovered that they shared a deep connection to the mountain, a love for its beauty, and a respect for its power. They found solace in each other's company, their shared experiences creating a bond that transcended words. Silas, who had thought himself destined to a life of solitude, found himself opening his heart to another person. Their friendship blossomed into something deeper, a quiet and profound love that grew with each passing day. Silas was drawn to Willow's unwavering spirit, her ability to find joy in the simplest of things, and her unwavering belief in the goodness of the world, even in the face of hardship. Willow, in turn, was drawn to Silas's quiet strength, his deep connection to the natural world, and the hidden tenderness that lay beneath his rugged exterior. The idea of marriage, something that had always seemed beyond his reach, now felt possible, even natural. He found himself longing for a shared life, a partnership built on mutual respect and affection. He approached Willow's family, seeking their blessing. They were hesitant at first, concerned about Silas's poverty and his solitary nature, but Willow's determination and Silas's quiet persistence eventually won them over. 2 years later, Silas and Willow were married. It was a small and simple ceremony, attended by the few families in their village. But it was filled with a joy and a love that made it more beautiful than any grand celebration. In his late 40s, Silas found a happiness he had never thought possible. He had a partner to share his life with, someone who understood him, who complimented him, and who loved him for who he was. Their happiness was complete with the arrival of their daughter, Wren. She was a bright and sensible child, inheriting her mother's strength and her father's deep connection to the mountain. Wren often accompanied Silas on his patrols, her small feet sure and steady on the rugged terrain. She learned the ways of the forest, the names of the plants and animals, the secrets of the ancient trails. Silas, who had once walked those trails alone, now had a companion to share them with, a daughter who filled his heart with a love that surpassed even his love for the wild. A shared life, enduring mysteries, and the cycle continues. The years that followed were a time of profound change and unexpected happiness for Silas. Life with Willow was a tapestry woven with threads of shared labor, mutual respect, and a love that deepened with each passing season. They built a life together, rooted in the rhythms of the mountain, their days filled with the comforting cadence of shared work and quiet companionship. Their home, once a solitary refuge for Silas, became a place of warmth and laughter. Willow's presence transformed the cabin, filling it with the aroma of freshly baked bread and the sound of her melodious singing. She brought with her a sense of order and vibrancy, her practical skills complementing Silas's deep knowledge of the mountain. Together they cultivated the land, their combined efforts yielding a bountiful harvest each year. Willow's ingenuity and hard work transformed Silas's small garden into a thriving source of food, providing them with sustenance and a connection to the earth. Silas, in turn, shared his knowledge of the mountain's secrets, teaching Willow the hidden trails, the medicinal properties of the plants, and the subtle signs of the changing seasons. They worked side by side, their movements a silent dance of cooperation. Willow, with her strong hands and unwavering determination, would till the soil and plant the seeds, her brow furrowed in concentration. Silas, his weathered face softened by a gentle smile, would tend to the livestock, his voice a soothing rumble as he spoke to the animals. Their evenings were spent by the hearth, the crackling fire casting dancing shadows on the walls. They would share stories of their day, their voices intertwining in the comfortable silence of their shared space. Willow would often read aloud from old books she had brought from her family home, her voice lilting and expressive, filling the cabin with tales of faraway lands and forgotten heroes. Silas, though not a man of many words, would listen with rapt attention, his gaze fixed on Willow. His heart filled with a quiet contentment he had never known before. The arrival of Wren filled their lives with a joy that transcended anything they had ever imagined. From the moment she was born, she was the center of their world, a tiny spark of life that illuminated their days and filled their hearts with an overflowing love. Raising Wren was a shared endeavor, a partnership in which both Silas and Willow played equally important roles. Willow instilled in Wren her practicality, her resilience, and her unwavering optimism. She taught her the importance of hard work, the value of community, and the power of kindness. Silas, in turn, shared with Wren his deep connection to the mountain, his knowledge of its ancient secrets, and his profound respect for the natural world. Wren grew into a bright and spirited young woman, inheriting the best qualities of both her parents. She had her mother's strength and determination, her quick wit and infectious laughter. But she also had Silas's quiet strength, his deep connection to the earth, and his unwavering sense of wonder. She spent her childhood exploring the mountain alongside her father, her small feet sure and steady on the rugged terrain. Silas taught her the names of the plants and animals, the subtle signs of the changing seasons, and the hidden trails that wound through the ancient forests. Wren, with her insatiable curiosity and her boundless energy, absorbed his teachings like a sponge, her mind eager to learn and her heart open to the mysteries of the natural world. As Wren grew older, she began to accompany Silas on his patrols, her presence a welcome addition to his solitary journeys. She learned to navigate the treacherous slopes, to read the subtle signs of the forest, and to anticipate the movements of the mountain's creatures. She developed a deep respect for the delicate balance of the ecosystem, understanding the interconnectedness of all living things. But the mountain held secrets that even Silas could not explain, mysteries that whispered on the wind and echoed in the rustling leaves. There were tales of ancient spirits that dwelled in the hidden valleys, of strange lights that danced in the night sky, and of creatures that roamed the forests, their existence shrouded in myth and legend. Wren, with her inquisitive mind, was particularly fascinated by these mysteries. She would spend hours poring over old maps and listening to the stories of the village elders, her imagination ignited by the tales of the unknown. She yearned to uncover the truth behind the legends, to unravel the secrets that lay hidden within the heart of the mountain. One such mystery was the legend of the shadow tiger. The elders spoke of a magnificent creature, a tiger of immense size and power, with eyes that glowed like molten gold. They said it was a guardian of the mountain, a spirit of the wild that protected the delicate balance of nature. Some claimed to have seen it, a fleeting glimpse of a striped form disappearing into the mist, a distant roar echoing through the valleys. But its existence remained shrouded in doubt, a tale passed down through generations, its truth obscured by the mists of time. Wren was captivated by the legend of the shadow tiger. She felt a strange connection to the creature, a sense of kinship that resonated deep within her soul. She often imagined it roaming the forests, its powerful presence a silent force shaping the destiny of the mountain. She dreamed of one day encountering the shadow tiger, of gazing into its golden eyes and understanding the secrets it held. As Wren matured, she began to explore the mountain on her own, venturing deeper into the uncharted territories, seeking answers to the questions that burned within her. She discovered hidden waterfalls, ancient groves, and forgotten trails, each discovery fueling her passion for the mountain and deepening her connection to its mysteries. One day, while exploring a remote canyon, Wren stumbled upon a hidden cave. The entrance was concealed behind a curtain of ivy, and the air around it felt strangely still and ancient. A sense of anticipation filled her as she pushed aside the ivy and stepped into the darkness. The cave was vast and silent, the only sound the gentle dripping of water from the stalactites that hung from the ceiling. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, Wren saw strange symbols carved into the walls, symbols that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. She traced the symbols with her fingers, feeling a strange vibration that resonated through her body. Deeper within the cave, Wren found a chamber. In the center of the chamber was a raised platform, and on the platform lay a large, intricately carved stone. As Wren approached the stone, she felt a surge of energy, a powerful force that seemed to emanate from its depths. Suddenly, the cave began to glow with an ethereal light. The symbols on the walls pulsed with increasing intensity, and the air crackled with energy. Wren felt a presence, a powerful and ancient consciousness that filled the chamber. And then she saw it. In the center of the glowing light, a figure began to materialize. It was a tiger, but not like any tiger she had ever seen. It was immense, its muscles rippling beneath its striped fur, its form radiating an aura of power and majesty. Its eyes glowed like molten gold, burning with an ancient wisdom. It was the shadow tiger. Wren stood in awe, her heart pounding in her chest, her breath caught in her throat. She had found it, the creature of legend, the guardian of the mountain. The tiger regarded her with its luminous eyes, its gaze both piercing and gentle. It seemed to communicate with her not through words, but through a deep and profound connection, a sharing of thoughts and emotions that transcended language. The shadow tiger revealed to Wren the secrets of the mountain, the ancient history of the land, the delicate balance of nature, and the interconnectedness of all living things. It spoke of the spirits that dwelled in the hidden places, of the forces that shaped the destiny of the world, and of the importance of preserving the harmony between humanity and nature. Wren listened with rapt attention, her mind expanding with each revelation, her understanding of the world deepening with every wordless communication. She learned that the shadow tiger was not merely a creature of legend, but a living embodiment of the mountain's spirit, a guardian of its ancient wisdom, and a protector of its delicate balance. The encounter with the shadow tiger transformed Wren. She emerged from the cave with a newfound understanding of her place in the world, a profound respect for the power and mystery of the natural world, and a deep commitment to protecting the mountain and its secrets. Wren carried the wisdom of the shadow tiger within her heart, sharing its teachings with her family and her community. She became a bridge between the human world and the world of the mountain, a guardian of its ancient wisdom and a protector of its delicate balance. And so the cycle continued. The legacy of Silas, the solitary man who had found love and family on the mountain, lived on through Wren. She embodied his deep connection to the natural world and his unwavering respect for its power. And like her father, Wren found her own path on the mountain, carrying its mysteries and its wisdom into the future, ensuring that the spirit of the wild would endure for generations to come. Wren's journey, trials, and destiny. Wren's encounter with the shadow tiger marked a profound turning point in her life. She was no longer just a young woman exploring the mountain. She was a chosen emissary, a bridge between the human world and the ancient spirit of the wild. The tiger's revelations ignited within her a burning desire to protect the mountain and its secrets, a sacred duty she embraced with unwavering dedication. Her transformation was not immediate or easy. The wisdom of the shadow tiger was vast and complex, challenging Wren's understanding of the world and her place within it. She spent years studying the ancient symbols she had seen in the cave, poring over faded texts and listening to the whispers of the wind, seeking to decipher the hidden meanings and unlock the secrets they held. Wren also had to learn to balance her newfound knowledge with the practicalities of her daily life. She continued to assist her parents, working the land, tending to the animals, and helping to raise her younger siblings. She learned to weave the lessons of the shadow tiger into her interactions with the villagers, subtly guiding them towards a greater respect for the natural world, encouraging sustainable practices and fostering a sense of interconnectedness with the mountain. Her efforts were met with mixed reactions. Some villagers, particularly the elders, recognized the wisdom in Wren's words, their hearts resonating with the ancient truths she carried. They saw in her the spirit of Silas, his quiet strength and his deep connection to the mountain, and they welcomed her teachings, eager to learn from her and to honor the traditions of their ancestors. But others were resistant to change, their minds hardened by years of Privichka and their hearts closed to the mysteries of the wild. They saw Wren as an eccentric, a dreamer who spoke of things they could not understand, her words dismissed as fanciful tales and superstitious nonsense. Some even feared her, whispering of the strange glow in her eyes and the uncanny connection she seemed to have with the creatures of the mountain. Wren faced these challenges with courage and patience. She understood that changing deeply held beliefs was a slow and arduous process, requiring more than just words. She knew she had to demonstrate the truth of her teachings through her actions, to embody the wisdom of the shadow tiger in her daily life. She worked tirelessly to heal the land, using her knowledge of the mountain's ecology to restore damaged forests, purify polluted streams, and revitalize barren fields. She taught the villagers new methods of farming that were both sustainable and productive, ensuring the long-term health of the land and the prosperity of the community. She also became a healer, using her knowledge of medicinal plants to cure the sick and ease the suffering of the injured. Her skills were remarkable, her touch gentle and sure, her remedies often working wonders where other treatments had failed. People came to her from far and wide, seeking her help, and her reputation as a healer grew, even among those who doubted her other teachings. Through her actions, Wren slowly began to earn the trust and respect of the villagers. They saw the tangible benefits of her wisdom, the healthy crops, the clean water, the healing hands, and they began to open their minds to the possibility that there was more to the mountain than they had ever imagined. However, Wren's journey was not without its trials. The harmony she worked so hard to maintain was threatened by forces both within and outside the village. A growing number of newcomers arrived, drawn by the rumors of the mountain's bounty and the village's prosperity. These newcomers did not share the villagers' respect for the land, nor did they heed Wren's warnings about the delicate balance of the ecosystem. They were driven by greed, seeking to exploit the mountain's resources for their own gain, and their actions threatened to disrupt the harmony that Wren and her parents had worked so hard to establish. Wren found herself in a difficult position. She was torn between her desire to welcome these newcomers and her duty to protect the mountain. She tried to reason with them, to explain the importance of sustainability and the consequences of their actions, but her words often fell on deaf ears. Some of the newcomers were openly hostile, dismissing Wren as a naive local who didn't understand the ways of the world. They saw her as an obstacle to their ambitions, a threat to their plans, and they sought to undermine her authority and discredit her teachings. Wren faced betrayal and opposition, her efforts to protect the mountain thwarted by those who valued profit over preservation. She learned that the darkness that lurked in the hearts of some men was as formidable a force as any natural disaster, and that protecting the mountain required more than just knowledge and skill. It required courage, resilience, and a willingness to confront the shadows that threatened to engulf the land. In her darkest hour, Wren turned to the memory of the shadow tiger, seeking guidance and strength. She returned to the hidden cave, the place where she had first encountered the ancient spirit, and she sat in silent meditation, seeking to reconnect with the powerful presence that had transformed her life. As she sat there, Surrounded by the ancient symbols carved into the walls, Wren felt a familiar surge of energy, a sense of warmth and peace that filled her soul. The shadow tiger appeared before her, its golden eyes glowing with a gentle wisdom, its powerful presence a comforting reassurance. The tiger reminded Wren of her purpose, of the sacred duty she had been chosen to fulfill. It told her that the path of a guardian was never easy, that it was filled with challenges and sacrifices, but that the rewards were immeasurable. It showed her visions of the mountain's past, of the ancient forces that had shaped the land, and of the delicate balance that sustained all life. The shadow tiger also revealed to Wren a hidden truth about her own destiny. It told her that she was not merely a protector of the mountain, but a part of it, a living embodiment of its spirit, a link in a chain that stretched back to the dawn of time. It showed her that her actions had consequences that reached far beyond her own lifetime, that her choices would shape the future of the mountain and all who depended upon it. Armed with this newfound understanding, Wren emerged from the cave with renewed determination. She knew that she could not face the challenges alone, that she needed allies, people who shared her vision and were willing to fight for the future of the mountain. She reached out to the villagers, to those who had embraced her teachings and understood the importance of protecting their home. She spoke to them with passion and conviction, sharing the visions she had seen and the wisdom she had received from the shadow tiger. Wren's words ignited a spark in their hearts. They saw the truth in her eyes, the unwavering commitment in her voice, and they knew that she was speaking not only for herself, but for the mountain itself. They pledged their support, vowing to stand by her side and to defend their home against the forces that threatened to destroy it. Together, Wren and her allies formed a coalition, a united front of humans and nature, determined to protect the mountain and its delicate balance. They worked tirelessly to educate the newcomers, to share their knowledge, and to persuade them to adopt more sustainable practices. They also took direct action, confronting those who threatened the mountain's well-being, using their skills and their courage to protect the land from harm. The struggle was long and arduous, but Wren and her allies never gave up hope. They faced setbacks and defeats, but they also celebrated victories and triumphs. They learned to work together, to combine their strengths and to overcome their weaknesses. They discovered the power of unity, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring strength of the bond between humanity and nature. In the end, Wren and her allies prevailed. They succeeded in turning the tide, in persuading the newcomers to embrace a more sustainable way of life, and in protecting the mountain from lasting damage. The harmony that had been threatened was restored, and the delicate balance of the ecosystem was preserved. Wren's journey had come full circle. She had started as a young woman seeking to understand the mysteries of the mountain, and she had become a leader, a guardian, a living embodiment of its spirit. She had faced trials and tribulations, but she had also discovered her own strength, her own courage, and her own destiny. And as the years passed, Wren's legacy lived on. She continued to protect the mountain, to guide her people, and to carry the wisdom of the shadow tiger into the future. She became a legend, a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the spirit of the wild can endure, and that the bond between humanity and nature can be a source of strength, healing, and enduring harmony. Wren's legacy and the enduring harmony. Wren's life became a tapestry woven into the very fabric of the mountain, her spirit intertwined with its ancient essence. As the years flowed like the mountain streams, she continued her work, her influence spreading far beyond the borders of her village. She was no longer just a guardian. She was a living legend, a beacon of hope, and a testament to the enduring power of the bond between humanity and nature. Her teachings, once met with skepticism and resistance, were now revered as sacred truths, passed down through generations in stories, songs, and ceremonies. The villagers and those who came after them lived in harmony with the mountain, honoring its rhythms, respecting its boundaries, and protecting its delicate balance. The mistakes of the past, the greed and short-sightedness that had once threatened to destroy their world, became cautionary tales, reminders of the importance of humility and stewardship. Wren established a council of elders, composed of both villagers and those who had come from afar, who were chosen for their wisdom, their understanding of the mountain's ways, and their commitment to preserving its sanctity. This council served as a guiding force, ensuring that the community remained true to Wren's teachings, resolving disputes, making decisions that affected the well-being of the mountain, and acting as a bridge between the human world and the spirit of the wild. The village itself transformed, becoming a sanctuary, a place of pilgrimage for those who sought to learn from the mountain and to connect with its ancient energy. People came from distant lands, drawn by the stories of Wren's wisdom and the mountain's healing power. They came seeking knowledge, guidance, and a deeper understanding of their place in the world. Wren welcomed them with open arms, sharing her knowledge, her experiences, and the wisdom she had gained from the shadow tiger. She taught them about the interconnectedness of all living things, about the importance of respecting the natural world, and about the delicate balance that sustained all life. She showed them how to live in harmony with the mountain, how to cultivate sustainable practices, and how to heal both the land and themselves. Many of those who came to learn stayed, drawn by the beauty of the mountain, the wisdom of its people, and the sense of belonging they found in the community. They became part of the village, contributing their skills and talents and enriching the cultural tapestry of the community. The village flourished, becoming a model of sustainable living, a testament to the power of human cooperation and the enduring wisdom of the natural world. Wren's legacy extended beyond the physical realm, permeating the spiritual and cultural lives of the people. New traditions arose, celebrating the mountain's bounty, honoring its spirits, and commemorating Wren's life and teachings. Festivals were held, where stories of her courage and wisdom were shared, where songs were sung in her honor, and where dances were performed to celebrate the harmony between humanity and nature. The ancient symbols that Wren had studied in the cave became sacred icons, woven into clothing, carved into tools, and painted on the walls of homes and temples. They served as constant reminders of the interconnectedness of all things, the cyclical nature of life, and the enduring presence of the mountain's spirit. The people developed a unique form of art, inspired by the beauty of the mountain and the wisdom of Wren's teachings. They created intricate carvings from the wood of the ancient forests, wove vibrant tapestries from the fibers of mountain plants, and painted breathtaking murals on the walls of their dwellings, depicting scenes from Wren's life, the legends of the shadow tiger, and the wonders of the natural world. Music became an integral part of their lives, a way to express their gratitude for the mountain's gifts, to celebrate its beauty, and to connect with its spiritual energy. They crafted instruments from natural materials, flutes from hollow reeds, drums from stretched animal hides, and stringed instruments from the vines of climbing plants. Their songs were filled with the sounds of the mountain, the rushing of waterfalls, the rustling of leaves, the songs of birds, and the whispers of the wind. Even their language evolved, incorporating words and phrases that reflected their deep connection to the mountain. They spoke of the mountain's breath, the wind, the mountain's tears, the rain, and the mountain's heart, the life force that flowed through all things. They used metaphors and similes drawn from the natural world, comparing human qualities to the characteristics of plants, animals, and geological formations. As the centuries passed, Wren's physical form faded into memory, but her spirit remained, woven into the fabric of the mountain, into the hearts of her people, and into the very essence of their culture. She became an archetype, a symbol of the divine feminine, the embodiment of wisdom, compassion, and the unwavering dedication to protecting the natural world. The shadow tiger, too, became a legendary figure, revered as a guardian spirit, a protector of the mountain, and a symbol of the wild's untamed power. Stories of the tiger's wisdom and its encounters with Wren were passed down through generations, inspiring awe and respect for the ancient spirit of the land. And so the harmony that Wren had established endured, a testament to the power of one person's vision and the enduring strength of the bond between humanity and nature. The mountain remained a sanctuary, a place of healing and inspiration. a living reminder that even in the face of adversity, it is possible to create a world where humans and nature can thrive together in peace and harmony. The legacy of Wren and the shadow tiger served as a beacon of hope for a world that often seemed intent on destroying itself. It inspired others to seek a more sustainable way of life, to reconnect with the natural world, and to embrace the wisdom of the ancients. Communities arose in other parts of the world, emulating the example of Wren's village, striving to create their own harmonious relationships with the land. Scholars and philosophers studied the teachings of Wren, seeking to understand the principles that underpinned her harmonious society. They wrote treatises and essays, exploring the interconnectedness of all things, the importance of ecological balance, and the ethical implications of human actions on the environment. Artists and musicians were inspired by the stories of Wren and the shadow tiger, creating works that celebrated the beauty of the natural world and the importance of preserving its sanctity. Their art served as a powerful reminder of the profound connection between humanity and nature, and the transformative power of living in harmony with the earth. The story of Wren and the shadow tiger became a myth, a legend that transcended time and space, a timeless tale that resonated with people of all cultures and backgrounds. It was a story of courage, wisdom, and the enduring power of love. Love for the land, love for community, and love for the interconnected web of life. And so the world was forever changed by the life of one young woman and her encounter with an ancient spirit. Wren's legacy lived on, not as a distant memory, but as a living force, shaping the destiny of humanity and ensuring the enduring harmony between the human world and the wild. The mountain stood as a testament to this harmony, a sacred place where the spirit of Wren and the wisdom of the shadow tiger continued to guide and inspire all who sought to listen to the whispers of the wind and the beating of the earth's heart.